Welcome back to Nomad Boatbuilding. I'm Mark Rutten, and today I'm building the Catalina Wherry. We are going to put the grounding shoe on the boat. Now my client Joe plans to use this boat for beach cruising in various marine parks, and he does not like the idea of pulling this boat up onto the beach and leaving the residue of synthetic materials behind, be it fiberglass or any other kind of plastic. So we decided to put a solid wood grounding shoe on, so I went down to my supplier Westwind Hardwoods and picked up some white oak. Okay, here's our last piece of oak. We're going to leave this behind for resawing. Get them to split it down the middle and dress it down for us. And this is going to be the sacrificial shoe for our boat. So these guys came in at, I'm going to call that 5/16, which is just about perfect, I'd say. Not crazy heavy, but it's going to take a lot of years to wear through that. I've got two pieces here, and my plan A was to just join them down the middle, except I don't love that idea for a number of reasons, and one of them is that there's enough sapwood on the edges that I'd have to come in quite a ways in order to join them down the middle, and I need to get just about 18 inches of overall width. So these guys are just like 10 and a half inches to the rough edge. Given how much sapwood we have here, I got like 2 inches here on this side, like 1.5 inches on this side. In order to get both of these sort of cut down so that they land in the center line, it makes it quite marginal on midships. So I'm concerned about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to land one of them right down the middle. I can add on to the sides. The section in the center that I need is not going to be nearly as deep and not nearly as long either, so it's quite possible I could even split this guy right down the middle and use one piece for each end. But I'm just going to start by laying this on the boat and tracing the shape onto it and see where it nets out. Now there's two center lines on here. One of them was where I picked up the actual center line at the ends and ran my string down here, and what I found was that there's like a 1-inch variation between one width and the other on either side of that center line, which means that there's a slight bow to this plank. So I've offset that 1/2 inch so that now either side of the center line I have about the same volume of material here midships, and that's the area I'm concerned about. Up here it's all going to get trimmed off anyway. So I'm going to pop this on the boat, and I'm going to see if we get a reasonable shape out of this thing without landing sapwood into it once I've traced out the bottom on it, and we'll see how that looks. So I'm just going to be playing around with trying to juggle this onto the center line of the boat itself. So that is my plan. Alright, that looks pretty good. Looks like I might be getting just a little bit sappy right there. I'm going to see if I can sneak it forward a little bit more. Okay, I like that. And up here, I think we are there. Okay. So you know what I want to do? I'm going to do this. We're going to just take a finishing nail and pop it right down the center here. Yep, and I was off by just a hair. All right, I think that's okay. Do the same thing back here. There we go. What I probably should have done is just drilled that hole so the finished nail can just drop through, and I could lift this up a little bit more and aim for the center line in there. This is exactly one of those times where you want to shave down your pencil good and steep on one side. Okay, let's pop this off and see how she looks. Now this plank is a little bit flat, Sonny, I will admit. Not much I can do about that. And we're going to be putting this on with Sikaflex, so it's really flexible. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay. Well, that's not too bad. It's going to come across there. So yeah, this gets a little, it's a bit of funny stuff there. I may have to leave it in there. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see what I can get out of that. If I can get enough width out of that to get the rest out of here, then we should be fine. All right, over to the bench to screw around for a little while. I want to thank all my subscribers for their ongoing support, their comments, their shares, and good wishes. And I also want to thank all of my followers on Patreon whose monthly pledges support this channel. If you can help us on Patreon, I would really appreciate it. There are links in the corner or down in the description. So I made my wings here, and because these basically got cut out of a piece of flat sawn stock, they got split down the middle, there's tension in the wood, all right? And it's pretty common when you split something close to the center line like this, that there's going to be some change in shape. And so that's exactly what happened. If I lay this up against here, we've got about 1/8 of an inch of a gap along the center, along the edge of this. And so to compensate for that, we need to joint this edge. There's a couple ways to do it. Of course, you get out your plane and try and plane it to a straight edge, but this is a very thin floppy thing to hang on to. There's no fast and easy way to do it except like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over so that the jointed, or the edges that are going to get joined, are facing, are aligned. I'm just going to flush it up in the middle here a little tiny bit. And the edges are basically overhanging a little at the ends. Get out our polymer nailer. We're going to pop a couple of little, tack that together there. Okay, now the table saw. Now the table saw here is still set up from when I ripped the center portion to width. So all I got to do is use that to guide us. So there we go, flip it over and we got a perfect joint right there. Beautiful. Okay, so I took my own advice. I drilled a hole that's a little oversized, dropped a nail on my center line here. With this one located in place, I drew a hole at the other end, dropped a nail in and scratched across the center line to find the point that it needs to land on. Now this guy's locked into our finished location. I can cut these with confidence, and I'll just leave these right in place until we're ready to do our final installation. So there's our wings. Justification mark. Same thing over here. And I'm just wondering if I should drop a nail in the center here too. Might not be a stupid idea. That way at least then these guys get located. I suppose why not? Okay, with everything locked in, we will just give ourselves a new line on the bottom. Okay, so our parts are all laid out and marked, and I'm just noticing that my two sections of plank are slightly different in thickness. This one's just a hair heavier. I think I'm just going to leave it. I think what we'll do is, after we put all this on, I'm going to be dressing off the edges anyway. I think I'll just lick this down with a plane or a sander or something like that and level them up. We'll just have a slight crown to the center, which is not a bad thing at all, I think, actually. So we'll just leave that alone. We won't sweat that small stuff. I marked which side these guys go on, so that's good. You know, the nice thing about having done this is I can pop these off. I can check that my markings on the bottom are good. And if so, I'm good to go. And if they're not good, I can put them right back in the exact same spot and remark them. Which if I had just like parked it on here and then went cowboy on it, eyeballed it, I would not be able to do that. So that's not a small thing, I think. Come on, let go, let go. All right. Obviously that hole needs to be a little bit bigger. That looks pretty good. Got a slight blank spot here. I can fill that into the ship's curve. And then this is our last one. And that looks good too. All right, great. So I think I'm just going to cut these square, and after we get it all glued on and the glue's set, then I'll bevel off the edges to meet the planking. I think that's the simplest way to do it. I have to figure out how I want to interact with my cutwater up there. I think I'm going to do a butt joint. And back here, there's another little stern post. Then that's got to go on, and I want this to overlay that so that any dragging does not catch the stern post. I want this to overlap that. So that's one little element I need to make sure I add. Okay, good. Done deal. And one more thing we're going to do down here is we're going to add some little chafing strips onto this lower plank edge, and I haven't decided how I want to do it. I think I'll just make them about 4 feet long or something like that. Looks like I might have to cut them to shape. Don't look like they're going to want to edge set very easily. I'll just use some scrap oak here if I have it. Yeah, I should have it from the bits that came off the ends. And so we'll just taper those out fore and aft too, so make them disappear. So it's just a little extra meat right here on this one plank, because if there's any plank edge that's going to take a beating, it's this one. And I hate seeing plywood get beat up. That's always the first path to trouble in the long run. Well, here's our panels roughed out. I'll just quickly knock the hair off of this guy here. Okay, that's great. Got our last one right here. Drop on there. Beautiful. Beautiful. That looks really good. I've got these little rubbing strikes I made here too that are going to go on just on the edge of this plank right here. And that's just because that corner is susceptible to a lot of beatings right there midships. So that's just to protect that plywood a little bit. And we'll just glue this on. You could always refresh it by planing off the old one and slapping a new one on there if you needed to. I've added a little cleat along the transom here that was requested the customer. This is probably mostly an affectation. Now, why would you even use something like this? You might use it because especially if you're working with, say, flat sawn planking for your transom, there's a great likelihood of flat sawn stuff cupping on you, and so this cleat added to the outside could help resist that. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons you might put that on there. I've never put one on before. I've never even seen a boat with one on there, but they're certainly out there. And the original examples of this particular boat had one of these on there, which is why we put it on. Anyhow, it's on there. It's not like it does any harm. It protects the planking back here at the back of the skeg, actually, which is not a bad thing. So I think we're going to put this on with Sikaflex, the polyurethane flexible adhesive, along with this. And one of the reasons for using Sikaflex instead of epoxy is because this is oak. Epoxy and oak don't really go well together. You could use G-Flex epoxy instead. However, there is a cost to that, and G-Flex is actually fairly expensive relative to regular epoxy. So for that reason alone, it doesn't make as much sense to use it. So the polyurethane too is going to be nice, a good rubbery adhesive that's going to deal with the fact that this is kind of flat sawn, so the wood movement, they'll work together better. And if you ever sort of wear your way through this thing, it's just if you're routing through here to fix a patch out, you can, when you hit that polyurethane, you'll notice it right away. It'd be just easy to identify. Anyhow, it's relatively cost effective. It's ish. We're going to blow through a couple of tubes. Well, certainly one tube for sure, maybe two tubes. I got 3 just in case. And at about, they're about $10 a tube wholesale, so it's not super expensive. Anyhow, so I'm just going to think about it. Is there anything else I want to do before I move ahead with this? Because once you start playing with the polyurethane, things get sticky fast. Probably just hit the back of this with some coarse sandpaper just to scuff it up a little bit. Okay, I got my bottom ready to go on. Just doing a dry run of how I'm going to clamp it in place. So a couple of quick grips set for pushing instead of pulling, and a caul down the middle of it. And this thing's got a slight cup, so as I push down on that caul, it flattens it out, but it also pushes down on the edges, so that's helping me out a lot. So I've pre-drilled in a whole bunch of spots for just some screws with fender washers, and the side pieces here, they get a whole lot more screws just because there's no, I really don't have any more clamps of that size. I guess I should get them, but I don't use them that often. So a few more screws on the sides, not a big deal really. And some of these are going to bridge the edge of this as well, because the finishing washers will bridge it. So they'll do double duty. Taped off along where I'm going to glue it all on there, just because the glue we're going to use is Sikaflex LOT, which means long open time. And I chose that because it's not quite as strong as the regular Sikaflex, but it's more flexible. And of course, the long open time means I just have more working time to get it all on and get it cleaned up before it starts to set up on me. So that's useful to me. And in the long run, I think a more flexible adhesive will be better. And I mean, there's very little stress on this thing. It'll hold on just fine. So we'll just start with the stern post here. So I think what I'll do is just try smearing this around a little bit before I screw it down. course, getting your solid contact is the most important thing. Okay, that looks good. And the sooner you try and sort of do a quick little cleanup on this, the better. So I'm just going to give it a quick wipe down with alcohol. I find it cleans it up just as well as any other kind of solvent. It's one of the reasons I like using Sikaflex. Stuff truly will get absolutely everywhere if you're not careful, so you do need to be pretty on top of having lots of clean rags on hand and solvent to clean it all up. Okay, there we go, that looks good. So we'll worry about peeling that tape a little bit later on after I deal with the rest of it here. Of course, always you got to stop to clean your hands really frequently. It's worse than epoxy. So I think I'm going to start on the center of the bottom and then do the sides. I think I'm just going to skim it first on the back side, just to make sure it's going to be covered well, because there's no sliding it around here. And then we'll come back and we'll butter up the whole central portion. So I got the bottom all skimmed out. Now I'm going to put a thickened coat on here. And truth be known, I have never tried using this stuff on such a large area. A little bit whippy too, so I think I'm going to go and open the workshop doors. Using flexible polyurethanes on a large surface can be tricky. So a couple of things that I do to make life easier is, first I warm up the product. I put the tubes in a plastic bag and put those in a pail of hot water and try and get them up to, I don't know, somewhere well above room temperature. I also use a toothed spreader. This does two things. It ensures that we have enough adhesive on the boat that we get full contact between the bottom and the sacrificial shoe without having too much material. And by running the strokes crosswise, it allows air to escape as we press that bottom on there. If we were to run the strokes the other way, guaranteed we'd have air trapped underneath, and guaranteed we'd not be able to squish this down as far as possible in order to get a good solid result. So when you're using this stuff, you want to make sure you've got a really properly functioning dripless caulking gun. Because you don't want this stuff just slowly oozing out all over the place, trust me. Okay, I'm ready for my panel. Just going to go clean up my hands a bit first. There we go. Okay. This is where I wish I had my dead blow mallet at hand. All right. That's loud. All right, here we go. We got the bottom on, so that's great. I didn't try and tape this off really particularly well because I knew I was just going to be fairing all of this out anyway. The tape was really just to keep the mess contained. Actually, it's not a terrible taping job. It's got a little bit of squeeze out here and there underneath it because I didn't do a great job of rubbing it down. But we're going to be sanding this a little bit anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. And ultimately, it's all getting painted over, so it doesn't really matter how good a taping job I did. So all this is going to get dubbed off and faired in. I'm probably going to just do like a gentle round over on the edges here, so it just sort of it's a soft shoulder all the way around. The cutwater, really happy we got this done because as small a thing as that is, it's actually a fairly involved little portion of the build. I think I'm going to just check and see what I got for the rub rail material, maybe stuff it through the planer before the day's done. So I got a feel for it. Will I get it on? Probably not, but I might play around with it, drop a batten on the side of the hull here and just check and see where my shear line looks like. We'll be flipping this over next week, which will be a great thing. I'm not going to bother doing any paint ahead of time, I decided. I'll just flip it over. We'll deal with getting all the frames in, and because there's going to be fastenings going through and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll just do the finishing on the inside first and then flip it over and do the finishing on the outside. Well, and the inside is curing at that point, so it's a good way to juggle the two together. Now, just in case you didn't get your fill of grounding shoes on this video, why don't you check out how we put the grounding shoes on the Bushidory. All right, till next time, folks. Ciao for now.